realizing I should put my mic in. Hello weirdos, welcome back to my channel, and I'm going to be using this fan today because again, it'd be super hot because AC just makes too much noise. So we are going to be doing the video that everybody does around this time of year, and that is the mid-year freakout tag. So I spent like about 30 minutes trying to figure out what the frick I was gonna say, and I figured it out. I made a rule that I'm not allowed to repeat books. So yeah, this year, so far as of right now, this day I'm recording this, which is like, I want to say June something, I've read 82 books. So that's good. I'm making really good progress on my goal. So I will obviously leave all of the stuff in the description as to who made it in their original videos. So check out that stuff there if you want more of that information. Very first question is, what is the best book that you read this year? And I've read quite a few good books. Any one that I rated 5-star I loved, even ones that I rated 4-star I thought were really, really good. I kind of chose 3, and so I'm just gonna pick them because I could not choose. So this first one is She Has Her Mother's Laugh. This is by Carl Zimmer. This is a book all about biology and heredity and genes and all that stuff that I like. So it was a really good science book that I read. It is a very thick, but I really, really enjoyed it and loved it. And I also thought it was pretty beautiful. So that's this one. And I'm going to put it back on the shelf because I don't want to have to because it goes right here. Yeah, I rated it 5 stars. Next book that I am going to be talking about is Mama's Boy. I don't actually have a copy of Mama's Boy. It's all about the author's story about coming out. It is a memoir. He grew up in Texas, but he was Mormon, so not a great combination for being queer. I just think that the story that he tells about his relationship between himself and his mother was pretty awesome. I was very, very emotional when I read it. I should say it almost made me cry. I should have written that down. Oh well. I think the other reason I didn't cry when I read this book was because I was in my classroom with my students and I didn't want to cry for my students. That's kind of like a general rule I have. Like, you can be vulnerable to your students. I just personally do not like crying in front of them, especially because I am their teacher. And the last book that I am going to talk about in terms of my favorite books is Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. This book is amazing. Lots of people praise it for really good reasons. There's lots of representation in it for trans and Latinx, and yeah, I just loved it. And you follow this boy who wants to prove that he is a brujo to his family, who are all very conservative and kind of constantly dead naming him and doing all of that yucky shit. And so in order to prove that he is a brujo, he tries to find the soul of his cousin, except he doesn't wind up finding the soul of his cousin. He finds the soul of somebody else, and it goes from there. And there's a almost like a ticking clock, and it all kind of happens around Dia de Muertos. So if you enjoy Dia de Muertos, if you have nostalgia around it like I do, I think it's a really good book to be reading around October time. I didn't, however, I still loved it. And those are the 3 books that I was going to talk about for best book. So now moving on to the next question, which is the best sequel. And I haven't read a ton of sequels. I genuinely don't, because I don't read a lot of series, or I'm trying to get into some series and I've only read the first book. So I think I've only read 3 or 4 sequels total. However, the one that won it for me was Harrow the Ninth. This is by Tim Senior. This is the sequel to Gideon the Ninth, which I should have pulled off my shelf, but I don't. Yeah, I freaking love this series. It's about lesbian necromancers. Do you need to say more? You follow Harrow in this book. Obviously, she's from the first book, and she kind of gets everything that she wanted, but it turns out to be not exactly what it was expecting. And I'm gonna be honest, the reason this is up here is because of that last third. I was kind of okay, this is kind of weird. We're just gonna go with it. And then the last third happened, and I was like, oh fuck yeah, I'm into it. So there's this one. I am excited to read Electo which will be coming out in the future, probably next year, which is sad because I really like this book series and I can't wait to read more. That is that one. Okay, so the next question is, what is a new release that you haven't read yet that you want to read? This one was pretty easy because I don't follow a lot of like new release stuff, but I was generally like looking at this person's book. I don't really know what it's about, but okay, I'm just gonna say what it is. It is Iron Widow by Shiran J. Zhao. They are a content creator on YouTube. I really like their content. They do a lot of like taking like pieces of like media that revolve around China and Asia, but primarily China because that is where they are from, and that is the cultural context that they have. They just talk about the references. They always include, well, almost always, an Untamed reference, and I am a simp for the Untamed, so you'll get me if you include any references at all to the Untamed in your media. But it is a fantasy story, and the way I think they describe it, it's kind of like a like modern sci-fi retelling of The Only Empress, which I am forgetting her exact name, but I think it's Wu Zian. It's Wu something. And she's a badass. Holy crap, she's scary. I am very, very excited. It has like literally, I think, come out in like the past like month. And I haven't gotten my hands on it yet, but I do have an Amazon gift card. So I might be purchasing that soon. I just have to look at audiobook stuff. I know that there is one. I just don't know how accessible it is to me yet. So anyway, that is a new release that I haven't read yet that I want to read. The next question is, what is your most anticipated release? One of the things I don't really do is follow what is going to be released soon. That's just not part of like what I enjoy in my book stew. However, I didn't actually have to do any research for this one because I was genuinely excited when I heard about this book. And this is a book called In the Heights. It's by Lin-Manuel Miranda and I think by a couple other people, but it's all about the process of the story of In the Heights going from being an idea in Lin's head to then being on the stage on Broadway and then being turned into a movie. It's going to be very similar to kind of like that Hamilton book. Again, I would pull it off the shelves for you, except it is very far away. I really enjoy books like that. I buy one every time I see a musical and I really like that musical. So I love them. I think I gave, last one I read, which was like the Great Comet one, I read that last year, I gave it 5 stars because I love shit like that. So yeah, that is the book that I am very, very excited to read / get my hands on, and I am going to be actively searching how to get my hands on that book. The next question is, what was your biggest disappointment? And I'm going to say that is An Abundance of Katherines. This is by John Green. I'm going to say overall, I haven't been reading a lot of books that I've loved recently. I've been reading kind of a lot of meh books. So there are a lot of candidates for this. However, the reason why An Abundance of Katherines kind of like took it away from some of the other ones is because the other ones I didn't have any high hopes for / kind of knew I wasn't gonna like. However, with Abundance of Katherines, this was my first John Green, so take this whatever way you want. With John Green, I kind of had this expectations that it would be good because it was somewhat popular. I just had major issues with some of the things that the characters did, and I just didn't like the characters. That's why I chose this one. The next question is, what was your biggest surprise? And for me, that was The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt. I read that this June. I was expecting it to just kind of be dry, and I wasn't really expecting to enjoy this as much as I did. Yeah, I just really liked the way Edmund Morris wrote about Teddy Roosevelt, and maybe it's just because Teddy Roosevelt has just a generally like very exciting, adventurous life that makes him so interesting and fascinating to read about, to the point where you need 3 giant ass biographies like this. Yeah, so I just found it way more compelling than I thought it was going to be. That is this one. The next question is, what was your favorite new author? With this, I had 2. I couldn't really decide, and the first one would be Paul Farmer. This is purely like my thing. I really like anthropological writing, and I think Paul Farmer does a really good job connecting the theory of the anthropology to the everyday layman person. I know not a lot of people enjoyed the writing, but as an anthropologist, I just really, really loved it. And I read his book, Fevers, Diamonds, and Feuds. Fevers, Feuds, and Diamonds. Anyway, it's on the screen. Yeah, that was all about Ebola and like the spread of Ebola and like all of the historical and cultural aspects that went into it. Not a lot of people love this book. I love this book because I love Paul Farmer, and I just really enjoy his writing, and it really appeals to me as an anthropologist. So that I think is why I derived so much love from this book. The other person I am going to say, this new author that I really, really enjoyed, is Beverly Daniels. Tautum. She wrote Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? I think she was just able to write so eloquently and succinctly about race that just made, and all of like these issues, just made a lot of sense in my brain. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed her writing, and I can't wait to find out more. I know there's a couple more, but yeah, it's very much in the academic vein, but not too far removed from the average person where it's not easy to understand. And those were some two authors that I really, really enjoyed their writing. The next question is new fictional crush. LOL, no, is my answer. That's the answer I wrote down on my sheet here. That is how I feel about that question. Next question is a book that made you cry. So none of them made me cry. I didn't weep any tears at all. I think that's just because I'm a little bit broken inside and I don't really like to feel things. Or I haven't been liking to feel things in the past half year. So crying because of books has kind of been low. Also, crying due to any media has kind of been on the low. It's not because I don't feel things, it's just I don't choose to express it that way recently. Not against crying, I love crying. Everybody deserves a good cry. I do cry, just nothing has made me cry lately because I've been protecting myself. But the ones I got pretty close was Refugee. This is by Alan Grant. This is also a very, very good book. It tells the story of 3 different refugees. They're all about the same age into 3 different times, and they all kind of like connect in a circular way. And from 3 different time periods, you're following one from the Holocaust, one escaping Cuba during like when Fidel Castro was around, and then one from Syria. Yeah, very, very moving. It's not always happy. And I'm very glad that this book dedicated towards like middle graders and high schoolers went the places it went to. Very good. I would recommend this as well. I recommend most of these books. Anyway, and the other book that I'm going to highlight is The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind by William Kamkwamba. The depictions about what he talks about, what he went through, especially to do with like famine, were horrifying. And those images have just stayed with me, almost made me cry. This is a book that talks about William's journey. It's not really a journey, it just tells his story about when he built a windmill for his town and his family, all of the great big visions that he had in order to make his family's life better and the town's life better while not having very much resources. And I think this book makes really, really good points about how people in the West and just people in general should be thinking about Africa instead of thinking it in the way that we stereotypically do now. The next question is, what was your new favorite character? And I had to think about this one because I read a lot of nonfiction. There's not necessarily characters. However, I did settle on Samira from the Magnus Chase books. Here are the Magnus Chase books. I really, really enjoyed these, and I really liked the no-nonsense kind of attitude that Samira has, kind of towards she doesn't let Magnus get away with shit. And I really enjoyed her character, and I think that her whole identity as being Loki's daughter is really, really interesting. And I love the way that Rick Riordan is able to talk about this kind of idea that multiple gods exist at once. That's something that isn't really something that's talked a lot about in fantasy or just in general today. And I really enjoyed seeing that in this book because Samira herself, she is Muslim and she wears a hijab, and she doesn't deny that like Loki is her father, but she also doesn't deny that like Allah is her god, if that makes any sense. It's really interesting, and I really, really like it because we in modern days don't really tend to think of gods in the way that they did, 1,000 years ago. The next question is a book that made me happy. And for this, I chose kind of a surprising choice, and that is The Road by Cormac McCarthy. This is not a happy book. Under no circumstances is this a happy book. However, this is a very bleak book, and it is very depressing. It's almost a thriller, and that made me very, very happy. It sounds horrible, but stay with me. I have read lots of post-apocalyptic stuff or just lots of horror things recently that have had a lot of paranormal things, and I was just like, I don't like that. I like when the horror comes from the disgustingness that is humanity, and that is what The Road is. It talks a lot about the horror and the terror of a situation, and this bleakness and the sadness is directly because of humans being horrible, and that made me really, really happy. So yes, this book made me happy. God, now I feel like a horrible person. Let's move on. So one of the last questions is, second to last question is, what is the most beautiful book that you have bought this year? And I picked out two because I bought some beautiful books, not gonna lie. First one is The Tea Girl of Hummingbird Lane by Lisa C. I just think that the color is really pretty, and then you have this like gold tea leaves that I think really, really make it very, very pretty, and I like it. And the spine's nice too. Anyway, and the second book I chose is Girls of Paper and Fire. This is by Natasha Mann, and yeah, I just think the blue, along with a little bit of like gold sparkliness, makes it very mysterious and pretty. And I think I like the back as well, where you have this burning paper. Is really cool, and I like it. Those are the two that I chose. And the very last question is, what is a book you want to read by the end of the year? As a rule, I don't like putting like time limits on things for me to read when I want to read. I kind of just read whatever I want, whenever I want. However, there is a book that I really, really do want to read at some point this year, preferably sooner rather than later, and that is The Husky and His White Cat Shijun. This is by, I do not know the Chinese name, so I'm going to read you the translation. Meat Bud does not eat meat. This is a Chinese BL novel. It is okay, so the reason I want to read this is going to sound really stupid, but it's actually not going to sound too stupid, but it's my reason and whatever. So there is an upcoming Chinese drama called Immortality that is going to be made based off of this book. As of right now, we don't have an exact air date, but we know it's going to be sometime in this calendar year. Hopefully, if it gets past censorship and gets an airing date. It has already been filmed. I believe all the post-production things have happened. It's just, I think, waiting to pass censorship and waiting to get that air date. So cross our fingers. But I'm really excited because one of my favorite actors is in it and plays one of the lead roles, and I want to read it, or at least to get started on it before I watch the show. I don't know if I'm kicking myself in the foot for doing that, but I don't know. I want to be somewhat familiar with the plot and like what happens before I watch it, just because I'm really, really excited for it, and I don't know. And so there you go. That's what I want to read by the end of this year. Hopefully, we'll see, but I also don't put a lot of pressure on myself to read things by a certain time either. That is it for this video. Leave a like. Let me know what is a book that you want to read by the end of this year. Yeah, so thank you guys so much for watching. Comment, like, share. You guys know, whole deal. Bye.